So this SR-71, I believe, is the third built, and it was retired very early. It doesn't have a hell of a lot of hours on it, and I believe that was because they were making advancements as they flew them, and they were actually making these things better as they were building them. And of the first 4, sadly 3 of them were lost. This is the only one that remains, and here she is. She's sitting about 4 feet off the ground at the Pima Air Museum and Space Museum. Look right in her. You can walk right underneath her. You can come right up to the landing. You can touch the tires. And one of the things they had a lot of trouble with this aircraft, they lost more than one aircraft, was because of the tires. The tires were, in the end, they were only certified to land 15 times, and the tires had to be replaced. It was a heat thing about what the tires endured as the aircraft flew. This shot really shows how nicely rippled the fuselage is. I'm not so sure what these white stripes are doing here. Must have been, well, like I said, this aircraft was mostly used for flight tests. I'm not so sure this airframe ever flew a combat mission. Interesting note about the nose is the whole thing's held on by 4 bolts, and it basically just, you know, 4 big bolts hold it on, and air pressure just keeps it there. They've never had an issue with the nose. The nose often came off at the end of a mission, and they have one sitting here with plexiglass on the top of it, and this is where some of the surveillance equipment would be inside, and this entire chamber was for surveillance equipment. This entire piece. Oh, I'll get back a bit so you can see how big it is. There's the nose of the SR, and here's the nose piece on the ground. Same piece. They had a whole bunch of these. Every aircraft had a whole bunch of these. They would put different surveillance packages inside it that were per the mission. The other place they had a lot of surveillance equipment in this aircraft were right down the chines, right down the outsides of the fuselage. There's bays. There are bays right down. The first like 1.5 to 2 feet of it is all about heat and radar absorption, and then the next area has equipment bays, 2 big ones, and a bunch of other stuff. I can sort of stick my camera right in this plane, I would. And that's where all your surveillance stuff is sitting. Oh, look at this. I was totally wrong. It was transferred to the US Air Force program that was trying to figure out how to make one of these things into a fighter jet, which they called the YF-12. Didn't go anywhere though. They kept it for reconnaissance. This is a pretty good little demonstration here. The flight instrumentation was 1950s, 1960s, so pretty basic. And the pilot sat in an early version of an astronaut suit built by David Clark. Oh, and here's one of the things that they would put in the equipment bays. That's a camera. It's one of her payloads. Oh, and here's the 4 different kinds of Blackbirds. Nice, I gotta get this out of reflection somehow so you guys can see it. But there's your 4 different types of Blackbirds. Some of these ones are still classified what they did. This is the one they tried to make into a fighter. Never went in, they never did it. They never went. They built it. They tested it forever. Didn't work out. Super successful. Also successful. One of the 2 of these is what Chuck Yeager flew to get his Mach 3 badge. In the US Air Force, if you attain Mach 3, you get an extra badge. Oh, and this one right here, this has got to be one of the, where's the one? This one doesn't show the drone version. This looks like the drone carrying pod right here. And that's the Mach 3 badge. That's pretty cool. And here's one of the tires. They were a big problem in developing this aircraft. And each one had to carry a parachute this big, just that's my hand, so a whole bunch of parachute just to deploy on landing to try and stop. Pretty cool. Got her up in the air here. I guess this is what the tires look like when they're about to go. That does not look good at all. Wow, where the hell did they get these tires? I guess they kept all the good ones. And I got one of the J58 engines sitting here, but this is pretty cool. This is a start cart, and when they first made these things, this is what it takes to start one engine. This guy here, there's two engines inside this thing. Throttle. Ooh, still works. I wonder if this thing will fire up. There's two engines inside here. The first ones built were using Buick engines, and in the end they switched them to 454 Chevys. And two engines, and it hooks up to the bottom of one of these engines somewhere. I've seen the guys do it. There's videos of mechanics doing it. And then when they're good to go, they rev that thing up, and that motor starts to spin, and then it gets a shot of certain type of fluid that explodes when it meets air, and that's what begins spinning the engine. That's how, or that's what ignites. It gets a shot of an explosive fluid that lights the engine, and she starts to run. So it takes two of these carts to start one of these things. They usually, well, they can do it with one, but they usually have one cart hooked up to each side. And these things work in any temperature. This thing will work at 115 degrees outside Edwards Air Force Base. It'll work. Beautiful shot under the wing. Beautiful. All those lines are there so that for heat expansion properties. And believe it or not, to change out the engine, you take this outer section of wing almost off. It's on a hinge, and you undo all of these screws in all of these panels all the way down here. Then you undo all of these screws and all of these screws, and then this whole chunk of wing flips up, and then the engine's exposed. And you can see that at the Evergreen Museum with theirs. They've got it in the engine removal position. Of it, it's sitting right next to the engine bay. The whole, that's the wing pointed straight up. This is the bottom of the wing. And to take an engine out on one of these things, I guess you pull bolts from all those, and it's got a hinge line. This is amazing. Wow. And you can really see, very, very interesting way to look at a Blackbird. Well, its last paint job has the signature of the two guys that did it. Huh, way to go, guys. Wow, that is really big. I just gotta say, that is huge. That is about 6 feet across. And this thing spat fire the length of it. What a bird. Oh, a fire truck here, and Chris is in it. What the heck? What's going on? Figure out how to start it? Come on. You're on the road with Chris and Norm, and we're in the Pima Air and Space Museum underneath the back of a Blackbird. It's actually the second one built. Can you get that to work? It's actually the second Blackbird built. And we're underneath it. It's right here. And here's one of the engines. They're pretty big. One of the secrets of this engine, it's very early design. The first version of this was designed in the late 1950s, J57, which actually flew on the prototype. And this is a J58. And the secret are these bypass. These have high pressure bypass. And for some reason, that got air into the afterburner stage under pressure that had enough oxygen in it to ignite and cause all kinds of thrust out this end. Oh, this is silly. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's try this one. I'm doing the takeoff right now.
This one's like 2 minutes long.
We'll just let that play. Apparently they changed the serial numbers on their aircraft all the time so nobody could figure out how many they had, because the public could watch these things take off and land in Japan and in England and outside Beale Air Force Base, but it really had quite the fan base in England. And they operated in England for close to 30 years. Oh, that's cool. There's a picture of one back there being refueled, and another one here. The SR-71s were refueled shortly after takeoff, and it wasn't because they were leaking fuel. That's a myth. The real reason was because it could only take off. The tires would last a lot longer if it took off at half fuel. Here's a nice tanker shot. The SR-71 never took off with full fuel. It was too heavy on the tires. It always took off with about half fuel, went straight to a tanker at 35,000 feet and got a full load of fuel and then took off. And she certainly needed fuel every 2 hours. Some flights had 5 refuelings. Most flights had 3 refuelings, some flights had 5. Blackbird number 51. And this is a little drone sitting underneath here. associated with this program, but not really. Yeah, this little thing is didn't really work out all that well. A little drone. They only launched 4 of these things for real, you know, for real missions, and don't think it worked out all that well.